To talk about accessibility, please welcome Emily Unity.
Hey everyone, my heart's beating really quickly. My name's Emily, my pronouns are they, them. I have lived and living experiences of suicide as well as bereaving both family and friends of suicide. Before I dig in, I'd like to acknowledge I'm speaking on the lands of the Muwinina people, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and especially extend that respect to any First Nations people in the room here today. I want to acknowledge how important it is that we emphasize decolonizing suicide prevention services and how important it is that we learn from First Nations wisdom. Today, I'll be talking about the accessibility of suicide prevention services. Often when I see people talk about accessibility, it's often only through sort of one lens. But today I really want to go a lot deeper and look at accessibility through 10 different lenses that are really important to my lived and living experiences. I'm going to describe what's on the screen for you today. I'm a very visual person. There's a circle that's divided into 10 parts. Each of these parts represents a different way that we can look at accessibility. I'm going to call them accessibility lenses for today. I'm going to share just 10 accessibility lenses that are really important to me, including some of my lived and living experiences. Of course, they are not all the accessibility lenses in the world, but these are just 10 that are really important to me. I believe that we are each the experts of our own experience. So whilst I'm talking, I'd love for you to reflect on your own experiences and see maybe the similarities or the differences between our experiences. The first lens I'd like to talk about is ability. Whilst I am an able-bodied person, I do have an invisible disability. I'm autistic, and many suicide prevention services have been incredibly inaccessible for my disability, whether it be the brightness of the lights, or the loudness of the sounds, or the texture of bed sheets, or even the communication style of professionals. So for this lens of ability, I've put the accessibility of services as really low. The next lens is age. Being a young person, not many services I've found are very age appropriate. I often get handballed between services as my age doesn't necessarily fit within certain categories, but the age lens hasn't affected my experience of accessibility nearly as badly as the ability lens, so I've rated that pretty low, but not as low as ability. The next lens is culture. In my experience, suicide prevention services are really not culturally appropriate. There are very few culturally diverse workers and peer workers within suicide prevention services, and for me, despite many years of seeking help, I still haven't found a worker that actually looks like me. Additionally, there is a severe lack of multicultural understandings of mental health more widely, but especially suicide. So I've rated this accessibility lens really, really low. Whoop, sorry. Your sneak preview. The next lens is diagnoses. My diagnoses have affected my experiences with suicide prevention services in a pretty mixed way. Sometimes they help me get to the right service a little bit quicker, but sometimes I've been misdiagnosed and handballed to different services, and it's made it really impossible to seek help. So I've rated this accessibility lens around the middle. The next lens is finance. At this point in my life, if I really need to, I can afford most suicide prevention services, not comfortably, but without worrying about whether I'll have enough money for food or housing. But this was definitely not the case for most of my life. So currently I've rated this accessibility lens pretty high. The next lens is gender. I'm femme-presenting and assigned female at birth, but I identify as non-binary. And in my experience, seeking any sort of suicide prevention support is almost guaranteeing me to be misgendered, which I can definitely handle on my good days, but when I'm in crisis, it's actively harmful. So I've rated this accessibility lens really low. Next lens is housing. Currently, I have pretty stable housing, but I also have multiple lived experiences of homelessness and domestic violence. So sometimes if I'm discharged from an inpatient stay, I might not have a safe place to go to afterwards. Housing is a pretty tricky one for me because it tends to fluctuate, but based on my current situation, I've rated this accessibility lens fairly high. The next lens is immigration. I was born in Australia, over in Perth. My mum is a Vietnamese refugee and my dad's a Malaysian migrant. Whilst I am a citizen, I've never had to worry about immigration and health for me, but I have lots of family and friends that have been really scared of seeking help, particularly when it regards to suicide prevention services, because of fear of deportation or fear of being migrated elsewhere. Whilst I personally haven't had this experience, I'm also a young carer, and so it affects the experience of many people that I care for. So I've rated this accessibility lens really high for me, but I've removed a bit because of the people that I care for. Next is language. Because I was born in Australia, English is my native language. However, mental health literacy was something that I definitely was not taught. In fact, much of my family and cultural supports didn't even believe in the concept of mental health, let alone have the language to even speak about it. So for a really long time, even though I could speak fluent English, I couldn't communicate about anything that I was experiencing. Because of my lack of mental health literacy, I didn't know most suicide prevention services even existed or that I deserved help. And whenever I rocked up at a service out of crisis, I didn't have the language to ask for the help that I needed. However, currently, I work as a mental health professional, and I've learned the language to communicate my experiences. So because of my current circumstances, I've rated this really high. And the last lens I'd like to share with you today is trauma. And I mean trauma from negative experiences of suicide prevention services. Boy, oh boy, do I have those. I have so many triggers and trauma from my support-seeking experiences. And I think that my trauma makes even seeking new help or new different types of services almost nearly impossible. Because even if a new service looks even a little bit like a previous experience, it's really scary to seek any sort of help. So I've rated this accessibility lens really low. In conclusion, those are my 10 very quick accessibility lenses for today. Before I wrap up, I really want to point out that they are not entirely separate lenses. Often they overlap. They create these intersectional experiences of accessibility, and they can become increasingly complex. It's not like they just add on to each other, but they catalyze each other and color each other in different complex ways. So my experience isn't just one of these lenses. It's all of them, all the time. And I think we need to think about accessibility through that sort of mixed and complex lens. Something I'd love for you to consider is, what are your accessibility lenses? What are the differences between your story and mine? I really do believe that we are each the experts of our own experience. I can only speak from my experience, but I really would love for you to share your experience in this conversation as well. I think that we can learn so much from and with each other, and that's the only way that we can create suicide prevention services that are truly accessible for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily. That was both remarkable and challenging, so thank you so much. I love the accessibility lenses, so really brilliant. Now, please go to Slido. There's your QR code if you need to use that. You have about 2 minutes to answer our first interactive question, which is, how can people as individuals advocate to make suicide prevention support and services more available? So you'll see the word cloud starting to form there. How can people as individuals advocate to make suicide prevention support and services more available? Some fantastic responses starting to fill out the word cloud there, which isn't surprising given we've had such a thought-provoking presentation. Okay, it looks like we might be reaching a natural plateau, perhaps. There's always plenty more discussion to be had.